you were doing. And actually, I go to that lesson.
The Hoover Board of Education meeting is now called to order. If you choose, please join me in a moment of silent prayer. Amen. Thank you. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Salute. Pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we get started with the roll call, I want to first congratulate Mr. Kendrick. Thank you. I told him when I first called him, I said, first of all, thank you for applying for school board. It takes somebody who's really wants to do it, step up and fill out the lengthy application. Number two, congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Sweet trick. Great to have you. Recording Secretary, Ms. Goodwin, would you please do a roll call? Status report.
Charles Hoover.
Here.
Craig Kelly.
Here.
Deanna Bauman. Here. Amy Tosney. Here. Kermit Kendrick.
Present.
Do we have a quorum? You have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. We now have a recognition time. Mr. Gaston, please.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. I'd first like to call up the Director of Choirs for Spain Park High School, Mr. Jim Schaefer. And we will get to a photograph here. This is one of the most amazing photographs that's ever been sent to me in the history of school PR.
I did that. I did that.
You took that photo?
Sorry, I stole it. Or my husband did. One of us. But I'm going to say it was me.
It will probably end up in the hall here at Central Office. Just amazing. Mr. Schaefer here in the Spain Park High School Chamber Choir performed as the guest choir at the 30th Annual University of Alabama Honor Choir. So a big invitation only, I believe, event. And how many students participated?
There are 13 high schools and about 260 total high school students. Only 8 students from each high school, with the exception of us, because we were selected as the guest choir. So we got to bring our full 24-member chamber choir.
Big honor for Spain Park. Just congratulate them.
Thank
you. Hey, Jason, is the University of Alabama London, is Kermit claim credit for that?
Well, yeah.
I recruited those students.
There you go. Next up, if Coach Shane Chilnut from Berry High School will make his way to the front. As you can see here, we have 2 photos, and in both photos, you will see a trophy. Spain Park High School, Berry Middle School, both reigning champs for table tennis. So if you'll tell us a little bit about that, Coach Chilnut.
Oh, yeah. Coach Steele, where are you? Coach Steele, Spain Park High School, 2 years in a row. Berry Middle School, 4 years in a row. It's club level. It's not Alabama High School athletic sanction, but it is open to anybody in the state. So we're proud of our guys. They're very
big deal. How many students at the middle school?
Middle school on the team.
On the team.
7.
And at the high school?
6, 7.
All right. And any of our students represented here tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Let's have our students come forward.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Sam. Matthew. Tyler. Taylor. Tommy. Carson. Zach. And
all right, I see a lot of proud parents in the back. Thank you for being here tonight. Let's get the students lined up for a nice photo. And let our parents, look at all those small phones in the back there. That is amazing.
Table tennis team form picture line. Good job.
Congratulations. Next up, the Hoover City Schools Child Nutrition Program Director and Associate Director, Melinda Bonner, Tricia Nura. This photo you see on the screen here is from the recent Asiford Conference at the Winfrey Hotel, but they have won Another award for the district. One is from, excuse me, let me get that photo. Actually, Linda, will you just tell us what that is?
Annually, the United States Department of Agriculture recognizes best practices throughout the nation, and that is done through the Alabama State Department of Education. And we won 2 awards this year. The first one is recognized by the Alabama State Department of Education for fiscal management innovations for improving plate costs. So we're always looking for new ways to save our taxpayer money. We also won the USDA Best Practice Award for health and wellness. And we have a top-notch wellness committee, and our model for health and wellness in Hoover is being copied by many, many districts throughout the nation, actually. So we're very proud. Thank you.
And Mr. Cooper, that concludes our formal recognitions. Next up, we have an update on a new habitat going up at Hoover High School. I'd like to call to the front Ms. Janet Ort, Environmental Sciences teacher.
Good evening. It's really nice to be here tonight. This is kind of an example of a dream come true and having something happen at the right time, at the right place, with the right support and the right community. Because some of this has been dreams for a long time at Hoover High School, and so we have this is a picture of our one of our sensory gardens that we're building at Hoover High School. So we had an idea. And the story started because of some of the things that we need with our students. And, you know, we're always told not to put a lot of words on a slide, but these words are great words. And it's from Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv. Never before in history have children been so plugged in and so out of touch with the natural world. Direct exposure to nature is essential for healthy childhood development, physical, emotional, and spiritual. What's more, nature is a potent therapy for depression, obesity, and ADD. Environment-based education dramatically, I'm going to pause here, dramatically improves standardized test scores and grade point averages and develops skills in problem solving, critical thinking, and decision making. Even creativity is stimulated by childhood experiences in nature. And I can tell you in my 20 years at Hoover High School, it's interesting to see the composition of students spending time outdoors change dramatically. And the time that we have, and so from that, we decided to build a habitat. I'm going to let the guys tell you a little bit about the history. Right. Tell me when you want me to advance it.
So 2009 was the very first big achievement, which was the first Lex Eco Challenge regional win, which won 10,000. So that was a great thing that we use as a model for our later procedures, such as 2017 we started working with Matt of Green Turtle, who is a man going across the country planting trees at schools. And so Ms. Orr took her class, or I was included, and some others such as Ronald Yuan. We started planting trees in the school, and that's where she started bringing us into what was the Lex Eco Challenge. And so for us, for this year, 2017-2018, we decided to create the sensory garden, and that's going to be part of a 5-year plan, which we will later elaborate on. And then we're just trying to raise awareness, educate, and also provide community service by including the special ed services, which is where the garden's going to be located at. And as always, Ms. Ort, although she's a supervisor, this is student-led, which is student learning, because since we're doing it ourselves, we're going to learn more from it. And we have been certified from the National Wildlife Federation that this Hoover High is now a living habitat. And so next, please.
A big part of our project is National Wildlife Federation certification, which is where you got a checklist of steps, and basically we're going to try to make Hoover a green eco school, nationally certified. And that is the biggest kind of overcarrying thought in our mind through all of our projects.
So specifically the sensory garden, we did this last month, building the beds and planting the plants that were donated and the dirt was donated, and getting some students from Hoover to come help us get this done. And we're hoping that having this garden and then raising more awareness with the students will help bring more change in our school and really help the special ed kids interact more with nature. And we know that making a change is best done when you have the whole school involved. And so improving the school will help improve the community.
I have to just take a moment here and say these guys dug out a whole bunch of boxwoods. If you've ever tried to move boxwoods, then you know that was the nitty gritty of getting this part of the habitat started. And eventually there'll be sight and sound and smell, and they'll be using some of the plants for culinary. So it'll be taste also. It's ongoing.
Alright, so as I said before, the next Eco Challenge is a two-part challenge. So the first part we're focusing on land and water. The next part will be air and climate. And so, as I said before, alright, keeping it brief now. We did this because we saw deforestation all over the world, or rather Hoover because overnight we just saw huge strips being chunked out. And so we're going to do this and start leading into, okay, we saw how much carbon intake was decreased by deforestation. Let's try to increase that by making plants, replanting trees, and also do other initiatives. So that's my very first part, keeping it brief.
We haven't heard back from this yet, so we're keeping our fingers crossed. It's almost time.
Another thing we're working on is we're going to establish a bunch of study sites around the campus, along the Cahaba, really in the courtyard, even kind of. And this is one of our established study sites in the Cahaba. We've been working on the biodiversity of invertebrates, which is like the fish, mussels, all that stuff. And it's going to help us to establish long-term data that we can use to kind of see what's changing over time and around our school.
And so if you can, you'll notice that the Alabama Course of Study in Science is heavily based in argument from data. So we've already contacted some of the biology department and various other people who will be using the long-term data that we're trying to catalog and to notice the changes. And I just kind of have to point out, that's a night green heron. That's one of our cool pictures from our cameras that we've been testing out where some good places for game cameras are. So we've got so these will be some of our study sessions, our study sites, excuse me.
Another thing we're doing is we're calling it taro obliteration. It's based on the eradication of invasive species, which is taro. It's just infested all over the Cahaba River, and we've been working with the Cahaba River Society, and we're going to be mapping taro using geolocation services, and we're going to be eradicating it to preserve biodiversity around the Cahaba. Some awesome donations that we've got. We've got some game cameras from Spy Point. They're just a game camera manufacturing. 50 bluebird houses from Mr. Philip Kelly of Diddley's Woodwares, and we're going to split those between Spain Park and Hoover to provide homes for birds. And also, we got a whole truckload of dirt and lumber from Mr. Derek Murphy. Got lost for a while. We found it.
There's a lot of stories about the lost dirt.
I don't know how you lose it, but we found it.
And if you lost a truckload of dirt, I can fill in on those stories.
I've been told he has a lot of dirt on it.
Yeah, well, it's not that kind of dirt. Look, that's the physical dirt. All right, so these are some of our wildlife game cameras, and I'm going to kind of wrap it up. I'm taking it away from them for just a minute. They can speak better than I can, but we've been finding those, and I don't think we have time to follow this link, but this is only part of a link, part of a network that we built with this project, and I think that that's one of the other really exciting parts of the project is to, this is just a part of the picture. And these guys and we started putting things together and realizing just how many entrances and connections we had made into the community. And boy, doesn't that make us all a stronger school and a stronger system and a stronger everything for people to know. Then this is just part of what we all do as teachers and staff at our schools. And just to kind of wrap this up, you know, the title is How Do We Connect with Curriculum? And you know, this is the 3D, our 3D vision for science education. You can read what's on the slide, and this ties in directly with our 2015 Alabama Course of Study. It ties in with national science standards. It is definitely argument from data. It is partially student designed, partially teacher led, and it's three-dimensional. And when you see happy faces, you have integrated learning and integrated service. So we're excited for the 5-year plan and for what it can mean to secondary students and other students all over. Thank you. Let's entertain any questions if you have some.
Yes.
Yes, I have one question on the program. And the link you were talking about, is this can be found on your website? Is there somewhere we can go and follow what you guys are doing?
We are doing some, right now we're doing some social media, and we're building the website right now. That'll be part of our competition communication also. And so, and we have an Instagram, Elise has been coordinating Instagram with the other exciting green efforts at Hoover High School, which would include the climate change group and the green team. So that's all part of that group. So it's a larger conglomerate.
So how do we find you on Instagram?
It's HHS Environment.
Okay. And we'll put all that too.
Just saw Coach Butler came in. A lot of you saw John's article, I think it was last spring, where this was coached. Really where I saw the program and got in touch with Coach Butler and Ms. Orr. And this is very important to me, and thank you, Superintendent, for this amount of time. We have so many good programs in Hoover, but my interest is the outdoors and protection of it, so thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. And Coach Butler is one of our co-sponsors. He's been a sponsor of the bowling team tonight. That's where he was. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now time for public participation tonight. Anybody?
So prior to that, may I acknowledge that we have one of our representatives with us, David Faulkner. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is also a good time for me to acknowledge our Education Foundation. Our Education Foundation sponsored, I believe, last Tuesday evening, a legislative forum and a dinner, and Representative Faulkner, along with Representative Farley, Williams, and then Senator Jabbo Wagner were all with us. So thank you for that, and thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having thank y'all for doing that, for having a legislative panel and inviting us out to talk to us and ask some questions and some issues. And again, to all of you, my name is David Faulkner. I am one of the representatives in Montgomery that has the honor and the privilege to represent part of Hoover down in Montgomery. And this afternoon, really at lunchtime, I went to a thing at the church to see my dad, and it was a senior citizen type event, and they handed out these cards that said, you know, today I'm thankful for, and they asked you to kind of look at that and say, what are you thankful for, and all the things that you're thankful for. And today I was visiting the Homewood School Board, and then tonight I got to be here with the Hoover School Board, and I am thankful. I'm thankful that I get to really and truly that I get to represent Hoover in Montgomery. It's a great community. I'm thankful for you guys that serve, that give your time to serve on this board. I'm thankful for you, Kathy, for being a great superintendent that demands excellence. And I'm thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for this community and what you stand for. And we're just blessed. We are blessed to be, I get to represent the 4 best school systems in the state of Alabama in Montgomery. And I feel very blessed to get to do that. I feel blessed to have my family, of course, and my faith. But we just got a lot to be thankful for. And I know the people of Hoover do. So I want to say that. And I just also want to say that for having that event, thank you for doing that. And appreciate you. Kathy told me that if she just had a $2,000 check, it would solve all of the Hoover budget woes. That there'd be no more financial needs if I got a $2,000 check. So tonight, Kathy.
$2 million.
Oh, I'm sorry. I feel like Clark Griswold put my wallet back in my pocket. Yeah, so I have a $2,000 check to present, and Kermit, a longtime friend. We've known each other for a long time. We serve on the board together. And welcome to the school board. Just great to see you up here with this other great group of people that I've gotten to know. So I'm really, it's awesome to have you on here. But anyway, so this is $2,000, Kathy, and just want to present that to the Hoover school system.
Thank you so much. We're very grateful.
Mr. President, I would like to say something to Representative Faulkner. You all know that HPTC, Hoover Schools Foundation, really assists in communicating with our delegation. David is one who's actually answered a text while on the floor in front of a vote. So it's really admirable. We don't agree on everything, 90% of everything, but at least the communication's there. Thank you for doing what you do.
Is Janet Turney here? I know Turner. I know I saw Steve, who helped host Education Foundation, and thank you again, Steve. That was a terrific event.
Okay, now, do we have any public participation tonight? Last call. Okay, good. Action items. You have the minutes before you from the regular board meeting scheduled on October 17th. Do you have a motion?
I'd like to recommend board your approval of our minutes from October 17, 2017.
Now I've got a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for approval of these minutes. Do we have a second? Second. Anybody, any questions from the board? Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda would be the personnel actions we have for a few days. Dr. Murphy?
I would request respectfully your approval, recommend your approval of the personnel action. We have 15 individuals who will be employed based on your approval this evening. Also 4 transfers, 5 change of status, 11 leave of absence, 10 resignations, 5 retirements with a total of 76 years. And we need your approval on 2 individuals for bus liability purposes. I would recommend board you approve the personnel report.
Do I have a motion on the superintendent's recommendation to approve the personnel report? So moved. Do we have a second? Second. Any questions for Dr. Murphy? Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Personnel report is approved. The next item on our agenda would be the business actions. Dr. Murphy?
I would ask at this point if we could have our CSFO, Tina Hancock, share with us. We're at the end of a fiscal year, and while we will elaborate a little bit more about the end of our fiscal year, which ended September 30th at our December board meeting, I nevertheless wanted to defer to her on our report this evening. So, Tina?
Thank you. As you have in your packet, you'll find the financial statements dated year-end September 30th, 2017. These are based upon the reconciled bank statements from October 2016 through September 2017. And for our fiscal year ended at September 30th, our total revenues and other sources of income were $202.6 million. Total expenditures were $177.6 million, which gave us a favorable excess of revenues over expenditures of $25 million. This favorable year-to-date variance is attributed to an increase in local revenues, primarily our ad valorem and sales tax receipts, city allocations, interest revenue, and the $9.1 million from the Jefferson County Commission appropriation. The remaining revenues reflect $9.1 million from the sale of Old Berry. That those funds were budgeted, and you'll see that on the agenda for one for the band room, which will take the most of that significant amount as an expenditure. But that revenue was budgeted, but we did not get to all those projects, so that's another for the $9.1 million. In the special revenue fund, there was $1.9 million increase in revenues resulting from the increases in daily lunch sales, local school donations and fundraisers, and some unanticipated federal revenues. For the general fund expenditures, typically at this point you would have seen 100% of that anticipated budget to have been spent. Overall, we only spent 93% of that budget, which was again attributes to We were watching our budget, we were trying to have cost savings. The special revenue fund had a $2.2 million increase in expenditures, which related and increased, from the increased revenues, and as I think I may have told you before, that special revenue fund is restricted, and we have to spend those funds in the year that you receive them, so that increased their expenditures as well. The capital outlay expenditures are $1.4 million less in the budget due to the delay of capital projects. We just couldn't get to everything in 1 year, but they are budgeted to be spent in this year, in the 2018 year. The debt service obligations were fully funded for this past fiscal year. Currently, we are working on our audit. The auditors are here now. So we are still subject, our financials are still subject to state edits by the State Department of Education, as well as any auditor adjustments at this time.
Board members, I'd like to ask your approval of the monthly financial report for September 2017 for our cash disbursements. September 2017 was $3,278,830, and also our payroll for October, which was $7,422,466. I recommend your approval of that, please.
Could I have a motion? I do have a motion on, do we have a motion on superintendent's recommendation to approve the business actions?
So moved.
Any questions from the board?
Yes, sir.
Before we go, I want to note one thing before we do get too giddy about those outstanding results. There were a couple of one-time events that Sales O'Berry and 9.1 from the county. We'll get a little more money from the county next year, but it won't be anywhere near $9.1 million. So $18.2 million out of 25, it's just kind of a one-shot event. So before anybody thinks that we don't need what we're getting from the city or anywhere else, pay close attention. But it's great work this year. We've got a new year now. So okay, so I've got a motion to approve the business actions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Business actions are approved. Next item on the agenda would be the bid number 16-105, which is the Hoover High School band. Dr. Murphy.
Board members, I recommend that you approve bid 16-105. This is our Hoover High School band room. I recommend that it be awarded to the low bidder, which was Duncan and Thompson. We did have 3 responsive bidders. This is our lowest bid. We do have with us this evening Mr. Latham from our architectural firm, and also Tracy, and certainly you may have questions, but I do recommend your approval of this bid.
Do I have a motion on the superintendent's recommendation for approval of bid 16-105 for the Hoover High School band room?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the bid for the Hoover High School band room, number 16-105 is approved.
I do want to just thank all of those who worked diligently to help us come to this point, and there are a couple of people in the room who may want to stand up and acknowledge how critically important this is, and we do have some of our folks from the band and from the music world from Hoover High School who are here, and they've been very gracious to thank us as a board for allowing us to come to this point with this project. So my Hoover High School band folks, would you just stand? I know you're delighted with this decision this evening.
I always have to have an update. You're about to tell us, I hope. How many kids are in the band right now?
Well, currently we have in our marching band 352. There are more students though involved in other aspects of our program. And I guess that's what I'd like to say is, you say to someone in our community, the Hoover High School band, and immediately people think about our marching band, which is normal because it's the most visible aspect of the program. But the Hoover band is not just our marching band. It's 4 symphonic bands, it's 3 jazz ensembles, it's jazz combos, it's a music theory program, it's a junior varsity and varsity buccaneer dance program, it's a junior varsity and varsity winter guard program, it's a percussion ensemble program. We have so many students that are going to be touched by your leadership, by your foresight, and your magnanimity. And we are so grateful. And I speak on behalf of the staff and our boosters at large. This is going to be something that touches students both now and in the future in a way that will be very powerful and provide performing arts and music education with a foundation that will make a difference in so many students' lives at Hoover High School. Thank you so much for all you've done. Thank you.
Remind me again now, how many people are in the $1 Million Band?
They're at 400. We're catching them. Just give us a couple more years. We're going to catch them, I promise.
This is the question. Anything on the horizon for a string instrument program? Violin, cello?
We don't have a plan currently. We have talked about it. It's one of those programs that we would love to see take place. It would be another aspect of music education that would reach out to even more students. The big thing there is getting some foundation, getting some sponsorships, getting some involvement from committees within the community who can help raise the funds for the needed equipment to make that happen.
What about other instruments like oboe, bassoon, some of the more unusual?
We have a vast inventory right now based on the students we have in the program. And that inventory is continually being augmented, repaired, evaluated year to year. Our booster organization has done a whole lot to, on a regular basis, provide school-owned instruments. And as well, the school system has stepped up on many occasions when we had, I'll give you an example. This year we started the year out with 17 sousaphones, but 20 students who played sousaphone. And Mr. Hewlin and the administration stepped up and found a way to help us to make that purchase possible so that we would have the number of instruments needed for the students who were here and excited about being a part of the tradition of the Hoover Band.
Well, I don't have to mention this to Dr. Murphy, but music is a lifelong gift, so thank you very much for what you're doing to touch all these kids.
Yes, sir, thank you.
That's huge.
Thank you.
I would like to say also, my daughter is in the AP Music Theory class, and as a music person, I'm completely floored at the things that she's learning, and now she wants to be a music major, and will probably sail through those theory classes just because it's so challenging, and it's just super impressive. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sally White is
Yes.
our teacher for the AP Music Theory program. So.
Thanks for your patience.
Yeah.
Remember in 2014, you brought a projected amount of band members you would have, and you've been very patient until we got some money to build up for this.
Well, you know, we're grateful. I mean, we know that things of this size and scope are big projects that involve time, planning, and I've just been grateful that we've had the chance to do this in the right way and make sure that we make the right decisions and prepare for the future.
Is the middle school feeder pool still continuing to grow?
The Bumpus and Simmons band programs are doing an incredible job every year, and that's the whole lifeblood of the high school band system. You know, we have seen the beginning programs in 6th grade at both Bumpus and Simmons, Broad Gap for the Bumpus side of things, continue to grow. More and more students. This year is the largest beginning band that Simmons has ever had.
I heard Simmons yesterday at the Veterans Day program, and they were playing all the 4 little armed forces things, and that was not easy. It was fantastic.
Yeah, we're very proud, and it's one of those things that kind of connects to what I was saying a moment ago. You say Hoover Band, and immediately you think about the marching band, but there's so much going on to help make that happen, and the education taking place at the middle school level with Valerie Morgan and Josh Lynch and Ben Posey. They are doing an incredible job, and they're helping to lay that foundation so that we can enjoy the great ensembles that you're seeing, and the students will get the foundation that'll give them that lifetime gift of music. Some will continue on at the collegiate level. Some will just be able to make that a part of their lives now and in the future.
And we might even add our elementary programs that act as a terrific foundation for our music
Certainly. They
programs.
do a lot.
I'm always impressed going into our elementary schools and looking at the music programs. And so thank our elementary folks.
Certainly.
We very well will likely come back to our board and ask about a few alternates that were a part of this process. Right now, we've only asked you to approve the base bid. but there are some alternates that are here that are fair and reasonable and might very well be within our budget. So I hope we can assist with some of the alternates. That will be a subsequent conversation for us. Thank you so much. Are there any of our parents who are here who would stand? Yeah, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the School Physical Accountability Act. Dr. Murphy?
Board members, I'd like to request your approval of the school fiscal accountability document that's presented to you per Act 2006-196.
Okay. Do we have a motion on the superintendent's recommendation for the approval of the School Fiscal Accountability Act?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Any questions for Dr. Murphy? Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? School Fiscal Accountability Act is approved. Next item on our agenda would be the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, as most of us know it. Administrative requirements, Part 200, which is part of our board policy 3-17. Dr. Murphy?
I would request your approval, please, of the Office of Management Budget Uniform Administrative Requirement. This is an expectation that comes to us from the State Department of Education based on legislative action. This has been vetted by the Alabama Association of School Boards. We presented it to you at our last board meeting for your review and would ask your approval this evening. Upon your approval, we would strike 3.17 from our current board policy, and what you approve this evening would become 3.17 in our policy manual. I recommend your approval, please.
Do we have a motion on the superintendent's recommendation for the approval of OMB Uniform Administrative Requirements, which is OMB Part 200, as a replacement for our board policy 3.17?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions from the board? Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The OMB Uniform Administrative Requirements, Part 200, place part policy 3.17 in our manual, board policy manual.
I would also like to ask your approval of, in addition to 3.16, which is also a part of our board policy, and that is specific to crowdfunding. And if you don't mind, I want to just read so that we know what we're adding to 3.16. Any property, money, or other resources that are obtained by a board employee through grants, fundraising, online giving, or like means in the name of or for the benefit of the school system or its students becomes the property of the school system and are subject to board policies and the procedures governing board property and resources. The superintendent is authorized to develop procedures governing the approval and the administration of any outside funding or crowdfunding activities. Again, this is a recommendation that comes to us from the School Board Association, been vetted by their attorneys, and again, my recommendation is for your approval.
Okay, do I have a motion on the superintendent's recommendation regarding crowdfunding policy 3.16?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions from the board? I'd just like to note that this is a change that everybody needs to pay attention to who gets involved with fundraising involving the schools. It's not an onerous change, it's more all-encompassing. It's more, to me, it's a lot clearer than it's ever been on about monies that are raised within the schools, by the schools, or by the school board or school employees. So if any of you know anybody that's involved in this kind of thing, they need to follow this policy because it's very clear now what happens to those funds and how those funds are accounted for. It's not necessarily been the case in the past.
Mr. President, I'll ask a question. What if a student starts one of these and you own school property with school computer?
That is not a legal activity unless it has been approved by the principal, and I can't imagine we would be approving individual students' fundraising. Upon discovering that, we would address that as a matter of misuse of our technology.
The next item on the agenda would be the River Chase Connection Center Director Job Description, Career Connection Center Director Job Description.
We have had lots of conversations about what we want to call our River Chase Center, and today we're calling it our Career Connection Center. We're obviously open if other people have thoughts, but the design of that particular campus is for us to help our students make a career connection. and that center will be primarily focused in that way. And so, board members, I'd like to ask that you approve the director position for the center. We need to get this individual in place, and of course, step one is let's define what that work looks like for that individual. I recommend your approval of this job description.
Okay. Do you have a motion for the superintendent's recommendation for the approval of the River Chase Career Connection Center Director job description? So, do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions?
Yes. Is this a contract type principal position? This would be an employee, or what type? I haven't read the description.
The individual will not be considered a principal in that our students remain a part of their respective schools. So there is a principal. This is a director of a program. And in terms of HR, let me look at Whit a little bit and look at Mary a little bit. This would actually be placed on the salary schedule, would be my position, but I want to kind of look at people who know more than me.
Need a nod?
I need a, can I get a blink or smile or something?
It would not be a contract principal
Phone a
position,
friend?
it would be a standard position with the school, a director position, I believe, is that right?
On our salary schedule under the director's
Students
position.
first acting employee.
It would,
Yes.
yes, sir.
Yes.
And being a director, it would follow the director's salary schedule.
Dr. Murphy, what type of considerations do we have to make given our current state of things with unitary status? How would this job description help us, hurt us, as it relates to achieving unitary status?
Yeah, and that's something that's always important to us. This position will be posted to our public domain so that any and all individuals who would meet the criteria would apply. And certainly our selection process will be based on the best candidate that we have for this position. But, you know, as is always true for all of our positions, looking for minority applicants is important to us as we seek unitary status.
And a different take on your question. The whole notion here of the Career Connection Center, I think, is holistically beneficial to unitary status because it serves a whole number of kids that probably weren't served before in ways that lead to jobs and careers.
Yeah, it certainly gives our students additional options for how they get to college and or how they get straight out of high school toward a career. So I do think, I'm hopeful it'll be embraced by the court and be helpful to us in unitary status. It's good. Okay. Recommend your approval.
Okay.
Oh, did we? Well, let's move on then. All right.
Next item on the agenda will be the board meeting dates on May 2018. Talk about a forward-looking group here.
Yes, we put before you earlier the dates for our board meeting, and we were in error as it related to our date of May the 8th. And I'm simply coming back because you had approved earlier, I believe, May the 15th, and it should have been May the 8th. And so this is nothing more than a correction of a date. I would recommend your approval.
We have a recommendation from the superintendent to change the currently scheduled board meeting date in May 2018 to May 8th. Do you have a motion on our recommendation for the approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any questions from the board? Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? One thing I'd like to say about dates, board meetings and all, excuse me.
I don't know if we voted on this.
That's what I was-
technical.
That's what I was asking about, I was in the record show.
So I need to phone a friend.
Yes.
Reverting back here, I'm sorry, reverting back here on the River Chase Career Connection Center Director job description. Do I have a motion to approve her recommendation to accept that job description?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions from the board? Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Check that one off. I will comment just real quick on this board meeting date. This is the second board meeting we've had in direct conflict with future Hoover meeting that's being conducted. There's one more at the Comedy Club tomorrow night. And so I would encourage you, since in my opinion and a lot of people's opinion, the future of Hoover relies pretty strongly on the school district. You can't be both places one time tonight, which you can't. Try to attend the one tomorrow night. Provide your input for it. It's the last one that I'm aware of. Dr. Murphy, new business? Any other?
I'm sorry, we're conversing here. Was there a question?
Yeah, I asked if he was talking to me and I didn't get the,
Motion and
the
second
motion
on
and
the
the second.
regular board
How
meeting
was that?
change on the May 8th meeting.
So moved and Craig, so.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for the interruption. Thank you.
I would like for us to show the STEAM video. Do we have that ready? And this is a video, I believe, from last year. Amanda, I see you back there. Amanda at Trace Crossings is very instrumental in the STEAM program, and we'd like to share this video.
Let me re-cue that. Dana Joy is here as well. Did you mention
I'm sorry,
that?
Dana, I didn't see you.
Dana, okay.
Oh, you're hiding.
The direction where the direction you want to go, and you press the button, and it will do the direction you want it to go. Yeah, it'll go anywhere you want it to go. Engineering or robotics or something, but I'm really into science and engineering and robotics. Because I got this giant robot, he looks like a tiny human, but you have to program it.
You know how to program?
Yeah.
That's very good. I'm proud of you. Oh, yeah, very good.
You have to but sometimes my friends can program them. So it doesn't matter whoever.
That was a cell phone video actually, and pretty good quality. And Mr. Kelly, that's when you visited the STEAM lab at Trace Crossings back in the spring. I know they've had another demonstration date. When was that? That was in October, Ms. Stone?
This past
The most recent one was in September, and this
that
was
video
from,
was in March.
and who was our young presenter featured in that video there?
Oliver, little kindergartner.
He is not shy, is he? Not at all. All right.
Jason, Ms. Bowman was there also. We went back again a couple of weeks ago. Ms. Stone, absolutely fantastic. You just saw one example. We just show up because we're invited. And these kids are so enthusiastic. There was no script for this child, and you can tell by listening to him, and it's not just that child. We went back again and just to go see it. How old was this student?
Kindergarten.
Kindergarten, explaining how this robot, you couldn't see what he was doing, but they had programmed the track. The robot could speak, and that was just one station. It's absolutely amazing.
Yes, it was, those children are just a breath of fresh air. They're adorable and their intelligence. I was blown away.
They love it. I think our last comment from Oliver, what was the last comment he was telling me? He wants to know where the first grade robotics team is. And so I'm having to come up with something, which we have something for him. But it's daily in the hallway. When are we gonna get started with the first grade robotics team? So we from high school to middle school, you know, 5th and 6th grade, 4th grade, 3rd, now we're down to first grade.
It's amazing.
Thanks for letting us share your story.
Thank you, thank you. We have several of our elementary schools that have STEM programs, but you guys do a terrific job at Trace. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Board members, we've had at least one very cursory conversation about YMCA and the possibility of collaborating with the YMCA regarding after-school care, and I would like to have YMCA come and join us at the mic, and they have a presentation for us this evening about a relationship in the future that we might want to embrace.
Dr. Murphy, board members, community, we're so thankful that we can be here tonight to share a little bit about the YMCA Greater Birmingham's After School Academy, and we are really looking forward to the opportunity to continue discussions and partnering with Hoover City Schools so we can help all of our students that are learning today to become leaders for tomorrow. Just to tell you a little bit about the YMCA, we are a nonprofit organization, and the YMCA of Greater Birmingham is part of a larger network of YMCAs across the country, and that's known as YMCA of the USA. And YMCAs are the #1 provider of child care programs, especially after school, across the country. So we are just having a local impact on our national reputation, and we're so excited that we can tonight share with you a little bit about what our after school programs are. So in the YMCA, youth development is one of our core focus areas, and so our after school academies fall under that bucket. And we believe that after-school programs should foster each child's social, emotional learning, their cognitive development, and their physical development. And we do that in the YMCA through opportunities and experiences that focus on what we call our 3 key impact drivers of achievement, relationship, and belonging. And through the research that we've done with the YMCA at the national level and with our local programs that we currently do in our branches, we know that the levers of change are through achievement, relationships, and belonging. So how does achievement look in an after-school program? It's seeing that student finally get a concept or idea through a STEM project, or when we're doing enrichment around math or literacy, or that first grader finally spells all their spelling words right when we're doing homework support. Seeing the students achieve is one of the single greatest things that we can do. And, you know, sometimes they don't always get that achievement right away. Sometimes they have to fail, and failing's okay, but in our program, we really want to foster achievement and building new skills. We also believe relationships are important, and we want to ensure that our students in our programs, that they understand and know how to build strong relationships, make new friends, but also that they have strong relationships with the staff in our program, and that we also foster very strong relationships between parents and staff, because this is just not a one-time thing with the Y coming in and doing the program and leaving, but it's really going to be an effort of relationships, not only with the parents, the staff, but with each individual school and the school district. And then in all of our programs, we want to ensure that we create a sense of belonging. We want the students in our programs to feel that they're valued, they're in a safe place, and we really want them to make sure that they know that they have an opportunity to have what we call in the Y of youth voice and choice. So they have an opportunity to voice their opinions, and then they also have an opportunity to choose some of the activities that they do within our programs. So tonight I wanted to just talk to you a little about 3 main focus areas to highlight our after-school program. And the first one is our curriculum. We do a curriculum-based program, and our programs are fun, active, and engaging. It has a learning component, but it doesn't look or feel like school. So kids are always learning in our after-school programs, but it's through a fun way. We use 9 research-based core components, and some of those include academic support, which includes math and literacy. And so we do an after-school curriculum called Kids Lit and Kids Math. It's designed for after-school programs. And then we also provide homework support. So every day each student would get the opportunity to work on their homework while they're at the Y After School Academy. We also have opportunities from STEM learning, global learning, leadership development, character development, social emotional learning, and a variety of different enrichments. But the beauty of partnering with the school to deliver our after school academy is that we can really work with each individual school to align the school day. So for example, in our after school program in Walker County at Oakland Middle School, our curriculum and our daily lesson plans for after school, they expand on what learning is going on in the classroom. So for example, if 3rd graders are working on fractions, we're going to pull math curriculum that's fun and games and exciting. The kids just think they're playing a game, but it's going to help enhance the learning that they've done in the classroom. So through this partnership, we would work closely with each individual school to tailor the curriculum based on what those particular school needs are. So if there's a grade level or an area in the school that they would want us to focus on more or less on, we have that ability to do that. Also, in the YMCA, we pride ourselves on our staff development and training program. And as a partner, we ensure that we would hire the highest quality staff and that they go through a very rigorous training program. All employees of the After School Academy through this partnership would be employees of the YMCA. So they would no longer be employees of Hoover City Schools, but would be our employees. And we have a very rigorous training program. So before any staff member can work a single day with a child in our programs, they're required to go through 40 hours of training with staff, primarily led by me. And that training can include our safe practices around childcare, so all of our emergency policies and procedures, how to use our curriculum and implement it, CPR, first aid, and then we also have an online training series around risk management and safety through our insurance company. But we don't believe in the line that learning stops once the after-school program starts. So we have a very intense year-round monthly in-service program. So all of our staff continue to get ongoing training throughout the year. And just some of the topics throughout the year they build on as we go through the school year, teaching the staff on youth affirmation and how to really use that with the students, how to do youth reflection and how to get kids to give us feedback. And then also how to, as adults, we like to always tell kids what to do. So we like to train our staff on how to give kids that youth choice. And then we also have very rigorous staff development tools that we use for staff assessment and to ensure that our staff are meeting our quality guidelines. And last, one of the things that we're most proud of at the YMCA, as I mentioned before, we are a nonprofit organization. And because of that, we believe childcare should be affordable for all. Our philosophy at the YMCA is we will never turn anyone away due to their inability to pay. Each year through our annual campaign, we raise dollars that helps support all of our programs, but essentially for this program, it would help provide scholarships, financial assistance to families who may not be able to afford after-school care that base on qualifications around household income. So that's one thing that we would be able to bring to this is to be able to offer reduced rates to students in the program. And I would like to just thank you for allowing me to give a brief overview of how together through this partnership we can bring our after-school academies to students for Hoover City Schools. And Dr. Murphy, we look forward to continue to work with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Yes, I have one question. The staff to student ratio.
The maximum that it would be one staff to 15 children. It would never be higher than that.
And so a typical day to work in stations basically then, and so that, because I know you mentioned third grade and they're working fractions.
Yeah.
So
depending on the enrollment, we keep them in like grade groups. So ideally, we would have a group of kindergartners, a group of first graders, second graders, and they would stay in that group the whole entire time throughout the day, and they would do their activities within their group. And then they would have the same counselor that would lead their activities.
The student, we would use our facilities, and students might elect some of the activities they wanted at the Y, and they could go to the Y for some activities, or bring all those activities to us, or?
We're still kind of working through some of those details. Currently, we serve about 130 Hoover City School students in our after-school programs, over 4 different YMCAs, and some of those students participate in other activities while they're at the Y. So that is one thing that we will, as we move forward, look at those details on how those students or any other students who want to participate in swim team, basketball, other activities at the Y, and how we could get them from the school to the Y.
Do you have a program like this in any of your other Y locations across Birmingham and Jefferson County?
All of our, we have After School Academy in 8 of our branches, and then we have 1 school-based site at Oakland Middle School in a partnership with Walker County Schools. So we currently run 8 after-school programs across the metro area, between Jefferson and Shelby County.
And this would replace our after-school programs we have now.
That is right.
Because all the schools that are listed are on here included.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So we have offered after-school care. We used to call that, I believe, extended day, and we not only had extended day, but we were trying to support our students during holidays, and so we called back on some of the holiday and summer programs, but most interested in the curriculum, the academic side of this opportunity for our students. We don't want to just be simply child care, but child care and supportive in a curriculum way. And this is something that is a strength of the Y, and thus we're at the table with them.
And you said something, Dr. Murphy, very interesting. So this would be, for different reasons, we stopped our summer program. So this would be an opportunity to go 12 months out of the year, which is very important to a lot of children.
Yeah, absolutely. We would definitely be willing to discuss that further of how we can serve during school holidays and during summer break.
Have you had any legal issues surrounding you being inside the school system?
We have not.
They promised us they'd assume all liability.
And roughly how many kids do we have in after school care now?
We just tried.
900?
Yeah, right at 900. And the Y believes that you might build that even further, capacity-wise, to support even more children, families. So board members, if you would do this, if you would consider what you've heard this evening, I know that there may be other additional questions as we progress through this. I would ask you to give thought to approving or disapproving this at our next board meeting in December. And certainly we're open to your questions. I may take your questions and pass them on, but we'll certainly try to get any remaining questions answered for you.
This is venue for the public to ask questions, or should we?
Sure.
Does anyone have a child in, yes?
I have a question about the curriculum, if that's a key focus. Hoover is so gracious in training us in OGAP and certain reading strategies and math strategies and that sort of thing. Would this be something that would be offered in the homework area and the student support so that we make sure that the kids are getting that same type support if it's
I think what I've heard the YMCA say is that they're certainly willing to come to our schools and understand where we are based on, you know, what are we teaching and what might our strategies be. We certainly don't want to have any conflict in the delivery system of instruction that would be, you know, confusing for our children. And so I think I've heard you say y'all would be on board to work with our schools, with our teachers, our principals, whomever, to make sure that we're not confusing children.
Absolutely.
Please.
Our proposed and hope we'll have a site director on site at each individual school, and that site director would work directly with the school staff, whether it's the grade level chair or the assistant principal, to help communicate back to us where the needs are so we can address them in the after school program.
Thank you.
There's a probability for a lot of teachers who want to do part-time work in the afternoons, if you will, that they could be selected and trained to do the Y program as well and carry that knowledge and expertise into that role. Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have met with our current employees in our after-school care to explain to them where we are in this process of thinking, and to let them know that the Y, don't let me misspeak, but the Y has indicated that they would give preferential interviews to our current employees who might want to continue working. So while they would not be our employees at that moment in time, they would become those of the Y. But we've also said to them there are no guaranteed positions for them, but certainly an interview process would be extended to them, and hopefully they would be an exact fit.
And I'm going to speak on behalf of me. I can't talk about these guys, so I haven't asked them. But for me, this is the most exceptional thing I've heard in a long time, because the need for after-school care for kids is critical for a lot of families in general. Number one. Number two, the whole youth development concept of social, emotional, physical, cognitive, it's phenomenal. They don't go and vegetate, sit there and watch cartoons or a movie or anything. Second of all, I mean, there are kids who don't even know how to swim. There's a chance here now that kids will learn how to swim, as an example. So the whole notion of what we can do for our kids, and particularly under the scholarship thing, so we can expand the umbrella, pull kids underneath who want to do this, who could benefit from this, who can't now for financial reasons or otherwise. This is made for love. This is perfect for our school and all our kids. And it's a great thing that add to what all the great things we're doing already. It's just one more thing that's going to make us even better, in my opinion.
Questions?
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for representing Y tonight.
Thank you.
Board members, we shared with you, I believe on Friday, a draft of our strategic plan. I believe that you all have a notebook of our strategic plan, and I'm just going to have our lead people come up and walk you through this strategic plan. I will remind you that we spent the better portion of last year in subcommittees, bringing our community and stakeholders to the table with us. You all may have to help me, but I believe we had 7 committees. We had a committee that was looking at finance. We had a committee that was looking at academics. We had a committee looking at technology. We had a committee looking at public relations. We had a committee that was looking at vision, mission, belief statements. We had a committee that was looking at unitary status, personnel. Thank y'all. I knew they'd come through for me. So we had a lot of stakeholders who came to the table last year with us, multiple meetings throughout the year, who gave us feedback. And much of what you have here is the thoughts of those who came to the table with us. In addition to that, just our experience as educators. There are 4 goals that we'll walk through this evening, but I would like to start first, please, with Dr. Simmons. Dr. Simmons worked with a team of individuals that looked at our mission statement, our vision, and our motto. So if we could start there.
We had a committee that met 3 to 4 times and looked at the mission, vision, and motto. The mission, we recommend or propose that we keep the current mission statement with adding the word leadership. So the proposed mission statement would read, in a safe, caring atmosphere of teaching and learning, Hoover City Schools will provide each student with opportunities to develop exemplary leadership and character and to achieve personal excellence through a rigorous and relevant curriculum. For vision, our current vision is all students are lifelong learners prepared to contribute positively to a rapidly changing world. The proposed vision statement is Hoover City Schools will be a premier educational institute which will prepare students to be lifelong learners who will contribute positively to our rapidly changing global society. We propose that we keep our current motto, which is learning for life.
Has been our motto since the beginning of the school district, I believe.
The one and only motto. Each subcommittee submitted 3 to 4 belief statements. Tomorrow, Central Office administrators will review the belief statements and refine them, and we'll email you all a copy of the belief statements the week following Thanksgiving. Any questions? Okay.
Now, who's gonna review the belief statements?
That will be Central Office administrators tomorrow.
So what we had is all the committees gave us 2 or 3 belief statements. A lot of them were redundant. A lot of them were just a rephrasing of what somebody else had said. And we just simply need to pull that all together. I'm not expecting, 6 pages of belief statements. I'm expecting that we may come up with 5 or 6 belief statements. What are the non-negotiables? What do we believe passionately? And those beliefs should give us significant direction to our strategic plan. And we will share those with you certainly the week after Thanksgiving at latest.
At what point do principals and teachers get involved in belief statements?
They have served already in capacities on our committees, and we're certainly happy to run any and all of our belief statements back past and through our principals. Okay, Ron, if you would talk to us about goal 1.
I think I need to back out of this to get to the document itself. Of course, student learning forms the foundation of everything we do, and we believe we have great and outstanding learning opportunities for children in Hoover, but we also believe that those can be better. And so looking forward to the next 5 years, we thoughtfully considered ways in which we can enhance and build what we have already established success with and to grow that and reach more children. We have 4 primary objectives related to that. Our goal is students will grow and achieve in measurable knowledge and skills through equitable access to relevant, rigorous, and engaging instruction. The first objective is going to focus primarily on learning resources and spaces to ensure that we are keeping up with the times in this rapidly changing world, and reconsidering both the resources we have in front of our students and the spaces in which they're doing that learning, and getting beyond the walls of the traditional classroom and considering ways that we can enhance opportunities for kids. The action steps associated with Objective 1 are using the design thinking process, which has transformed many of our ways of thinking about the future here in the district, including with our foundation, with our Hoover Foundation, to look at those spaces and to be an avenue for reconsidering ways. Much of what you're going to hear about what we're doing with the River Chase Career Center emerged from exactly such a process. Collaborating with instructional leaders to look at our resources. We have an abundance of resources. In some areas I would say we even have too many resources. And we need to identify the exemplary ones, we need to identify the redundant ones and the deficient ones. Prune the garden and ensure that those things are going to grow, have the room to grow, that have the most success, and that we can support with the staff that we have and the resources that we have on hand. And number 3, establish a cycle for continuous review of those resources so that we don't stay put in place as the times change and the needs change. We will respond to that. The second objective, 1B, the next page. Yes, sir.
Number 3, they use state textbook adoption cycle. That's a 6-year cycle, and this plan here goes for what, 5 years. What happens? I mean, I see the need for having using the textbook cycle because, I mean, you've got to stick to the state curriculum, you've got to stick to the state approved textbooks, you can't deviate, I got all that. But what happens one year when you're not approving any kind of books or anything for K through 3 as an example, but you're doing a social studies? I don't see is that relevant across the entire spectrum K through 12 in terms of using that as a cycle?
Not necessarily, and if you'll consider the number of times we brought ad hoc textbook committees to you to consider those things, when we are in those periods where, for example, when Career Tech is on the cycle, I believe that's 2 years from now. And when that comes up, that's obvious, that area doesn't affect elementary, but there's going to be things that we're going to want to do at the elementary level there. We can consider those things and look at those things as a local district. The state cycle primarily serves as a compass heading for us in the allocation of the state textbook funds. But we also allocate a portion of local money to those resources that are not restricted to the state textbook funds. Objective 1B is looking at our accountability benchmarks. One of the things that has held us back, to be quite honest, is the changing times politically. As leaders change, as state and federal politics change, we love to shift the weather vane of education in terms of what we test, when we test, and how we test. And just about the time we start building data streams, we dump the cards over and start over again. So we really feel the need to invest some time in collaborating and understanding what our expectations are locally so that we have some benchmarks to measure ourselves against throughout the period of this plan that are not going to be dependent upon state and federal requirements. We certainly will adhere to the law in both accords, but that we quit moving like a weather vane with the shifting winds in this particular area. So we're going to need to invest some time in collaborating, define these proficiency targets, and we want to look for things that go beyond just test scores. We want to look for enrollment in particular programs and areas. We talked a lot about the arts and music today, and that's something we should be measuring and looking at is participation in those programs and expanding opportunities for kids there. So I look forward to not throwing, I mean, we certainly need achievement measures, we need learning gain measures, and those are things that mean a lot to measuring our progress. But I don't want to be held only to those in measuring the progress of our kids and this school district.
Question?
Yes, sir.
We talked about this the other day. Locally defined proficiency targets for 2nd, 5th, 8th, and 12th grades. You know, we came talking about the report card the other day. We talked about the issues around the 10th graders. And here, for me, this particular objective is focused on the wrong thing, on the wrong entity. You know, it's all board, it's stuff you're gonna present to us. You know, most of us don't have a really good understanding of what goes on in the school because we're not educators. So I think the target is almost misdirected what you're trying to do in the assessments here. As an example, out of the number of days that we've been in school this year, how many were involved in assessments? A lot. And so, you know, it's just, I don't think you need to cater to us necessarily because, I mean, it's like a hog look at a wristwatch, depending on how you present it, unless you, like we just talked about earlier, unless you can dumb it down to something very simple and very understanding, that's a true indicator. And so I know you got to do the report, but we've talked about all this, and I'm going to not say any more beyond this objective, but don't cater to us. The people that are absent from this are the teachers and the principals. I think the word principal in there 3 or 4 times, best I could tell. Teachers seldom, other than professional development. So my point of emphasis is not us, it's down where the rubber meets the road in the classroom.
I agree with you.
And I think our emphasis is really the students.
Yeah.
And you know, I think this is nothing more than trying to be respectful to our obligation to the board, because this particular one deals with us not being so focused on state and federal, but having you help us on locally, what do we believe our accountability is? So it wasn't pandering to the board as much as it is, we're in this together to make a decision, what does our local benchmarks look like, and the accountability and obligation we have to you to fulfill that. So maybe our mindset was a little different than it's reading to you.
Maybe.
But we can fix that.
Yes.
I mean, I'm saying fix that, it's just a point of discussion for me.
1C, establishing a scope and sequence of essential professional development topics. We move down here. Developing a scope and sequence of essential professional development topics for all certificated employees. We've made an intentional decision in this district to use instructional resources that are not directly tied to textbook programs, which you may think of as basal resources. As a result of that, our teachers, there's a lot of training that's associated. OGAP was mentioned earlier, which is a very big part of what we do with teachers. And we need to be tracking that in terms of, are we ensured that all of our teachers have had the training that they need in order to implement the curriculum that we have. We have about an 11% turnover per year, Mary, I believe, in our classroom teaching core. And so that's about 100, represents about 110, 120 teachers per year that we are training and that we're bringing in. And we need to stay with them. We need to, Dr. Adams has been revamping our mentoring program for new teachers, and we're needing to make more than a commitment of the first 3 days of school in terms of supporting those teachers onward. So we need to get this to a form where we have a curriculum, if you will, for our teaching programs, and to ensure that our teachers have completed those curricula in a way that they can deliver the curriculum appropriately. And finally, the fourth section of this area is addressing the issues that we have to pay attention to the kids who need help at both ends of the spectrum, enhancing learning supports for struggling students in the lowest quartile of achievement and ensure equitable access to evidence-based instruction intervention resources while remaining committed to supporting and accelerating the progress of advanced high-achieving students. This is the rub, if you will, of every classroom teacher's dilemma, to work with students who are sometimes many grade levels behind, and sometimes students who need access to resources that are many grade levels above where they currently sit and stand. So working together in ways to, we have, again, an enormous variety of resources. We need to dig into those resources, find the ones that work best, support them, make sure that they're available to all the students who need them, and that they're implemented appropriately. Teachers have received the training, and that they're implemented appropriately. In doing these things, of course, we're going to be spending, as a result of the second bullet there, looking at ways that we can grow and achieve in a lot of areas that go beyond some of our typical measures, but some of the benchmarks that we have begun to think about setting in this area, looking at our students who have been with us for at least 3 academic years. We do have a lot of transition in the school system, and we want to ensure that we're measuring students who have been exposed to our curriculum. But looking at those students, we would expect to see a 95% 4-year cohort graduation rate, 96% 5-year cohort rate. College and career readiness, we expect 90% of our graduates to meet at least one college and career readiness indicator. We would expect 75% of our graduates to meet at least 3 college and career readiness indicators. In terms of achievement, grades 2 through 10, we would expect at least 80% of our students to be on grade level in their core areas, and 85% of the students to meet annual growth targets, which means 1 year or more in all of those core areas. And in looking at our achievement gap, we would expect these are our students who need the most assistance and the most help. At least 75% of those students in the lowest quartile for achievement will meet annual growth targets of 1 year or more in math and reading. That's what we're starting with as a baseline, and we will continue to work and develop and enhance, clarify those benchmarks.
And of course, there are some additional pieces to this that's not just about those students who've been with us for 3 years, because all the students who are with us are critical, but just starting with this baseline. There are lots of other parts and pieces to this, and that is increased enrollment in our advanced placement classes and the achievement of scores of 4 and 5, additional students in our dual enrollment opportunities, increased scores ACT, and thus increases in scholarships. So there's still lots of other pieces that will be defined. As I shared this with you earlier in the week, I said to you, this is kind of the 30,000-foot view. There's still lots of parts and pieces that will continue to develop underneath that. So before Ron sits, other thoughts, questions, concerns?
I have to ask again, what about the average to above average performing students who are scraping and clawing to get into college based upon the ACT scores, who sit right in the middle? They're not high performing, they're not low performing, but they're omitted. And it's not a fault of this, it's always been the case. They're great kids, we love those kids, they come from great households, you know, they do good, they're not a problem, you know. You've heard me say this for years.
I have. So I think what we're doing at River Chase is going to be a tremendous boost.
If I'm a parent, you know,
that's a different show.
What about my kids? You know, that's what I think.
Well, and so we're open. So what is the thought as it relates to what the missing, I mean, obviously there's some part of this we've just missed the mark, so we'll own that. What is it that we've missed, and how do we articulate to respond to your concern?
I'll have something.
Okay. Anything else? We certainly don't want to forget any of our kids.
Sucking it all in.
Mr. President, I do thank you very much to the staff. I think it's very important that we're setting our own goals here, not just to be servant to the federal government and the state. So you all know we've gone from, you can name off the different tests with Scantron now, with ACT, so we're just beholden to whatever the average is in the state or the Fed set. So this is a benchmark. We'll put ourselves out there a little bit on the hook here to make sure that we can report back that our children are advancing, not just because of the average standards in the state of Alabama, it's for what Hoover is. So thank you.
Okay, goal 2 relates to finance.
And basically our goal, it overlaps HR a little bit. Human and financial resources are utilized in an efficient and effective manner to support high quality classroom instruction. So our first objective is to develop a balanced budget to maximize those financial resources. We have 3 action steps basically that encompass working with each department to help them analyze their spending, make their spending more realistic to meet those objectives, review their budgets monthly. We already do that, but we want to continue to do that and make a commitment to that. And also to allocate the discretionary funds yearly to those to the local schools and review those to see how they're using those funds to best meet those needs. So with that, we want to make our commitment that we will continue to maintain a balanced annual budget. And goal 2 is to develop a long-term plan which addresses student growth in the district. As we have seen, we are definitely growing by leaps and bounds. And what we pretty much here is our capital plan to conduct facility assessments, develop and implement an intentional 5-year capital plan. We are required to have a 5-year capital plan, but we have been trying to be very intentional about how we plan for that, to actually have those projects go forth and be very specific when we list those items of what we plan to do in the current year and in future years. And to develop a plan to continue the current refresh for the technology cycle. And we want to be committed to, again, intentionally plan for that 5-year projection with our facility assessments, which we will do with the local school administrators and operations, and commit to plan for those technology refreshments. And our third goal is to develop a plan to increase revenues and reduce debt. As we mentioned to you before, we have made some investments in the past year which have done great as far as our interest. And since we are blessed that we have cash reserves, we need to look at those rates and continue to watch those short-term investments to make the money that we have in our reserves actually work for us and not just sit there in a checking account and get less interest than what we could do with some other things. As we've also mentioned in the past, we want to look at those bond refundings. We did have a bond refund this year, but we have another bond opportunity refund in 2020, which will be our call date for the 2012 bond. In 2020, that bond payment will increase by $2 million. So we would like to be able to get in front of that and try to refund that before that payment increases to that extent. We would like to look at identifying new revenue streams, working with our city and state leaders to look at those untapped reserves that we may not have seen in the past. And also we are in the process and looking to implement a new time clock system. It will be more cost effective, it will be more efficient, and it actually satisfy some of the reporting needs that we are required to report to the State Department. And then Mary and I are kind of overlapping this together and tag teaming this, so I'll let Mary have the HR piece.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
When you talk about balanced budget here, it's almost like, is that the part before the horse? Is that a restrictive term when you start talking about all the goals that are under number 1 about academic achievement? And particularly when you get back to facilities assessments, facility assessment, and you're talking about creative learning spaces and all this kind of thing. It's probably helpful to tie some of this together, because if I'm anybody, principal anybody, and I say, well, I gotta have a balanced budget, and I back my budget for my school, yes, but we need, somebody's gotta make, what's being proposed is probably gonna exceed budget expectations or budgeted revenues currently. And so you address the notion of additional revenue streams from the city and some other things, but I don't, everybody throws this balanced budget thing out, and it's so important, yet it can be so restrictive in terms of people's mental ability to think about creative learning spaces, those kind of things.
That was one reason we wanted to be intentional about the 5-year capital plan. In the past year, Tracy and I both went out and did facility assessments with the school administrators to get their list of needs and at their school, the immediate needs, and plus their wants list. And we want to continue to do that and update that and try to plan for those things that we have to do, and then those things that we want to do. But in being intentional, of course, we can't do everything in 1 year, in one budget year, but try to plan for those as those come about.
Yeah, and part of the facilities assessment, I mean, I've heard stories of different schools run in different ways, and through the years, you may have a once classroom or other room used for storage of stuff that's not really taught. I mean, it's use of space as well as just, what the facilities look like in terms of condition. It's a big one.
Yes, sir.
Here.
As Tina mentioned, we are combining this particular goal with human resources and our financial area, since those do coincide in a lot of respects. So initially for our objective, number 2D, we're looking at hiring and retaining quality teachers and support staff. one of our first strategic planning meetings with the community. It was very prominent that, you know, we are looking at the whole system from top down and providing the best, not only certified staff, but support personnel. So we want to look at that turnover data for both those certified and non-certificated employees, and hopefully decrease or at least have our annual turnover percentage to be less than 10%. Actually, it was 9.6% this past year. And we have different variables. For example, in 2013, we had a mass exodus of teachers with the retirement incentive in January 13. So those factors can impact our turnover as well. But we want to at least keep that at a 10% or below. With non-certificated, we're targeting 15% or below, and that has fluctuated as well. We're also looking at different ways to analyze our sustainable staffing formulas. For example, our custodians, we are looking at square footage, student enrollment as an example. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to evaluate how our buildings are staffed. Also looking at our employee benefits. We do boast one of the stronger local benefit packages compared to some of our over-the-mountain systems, but we continue to analyze that. For example, revising our dental plan that includes higher orthodontics coverage, offering the upcoming possibility of ID theft coverage for interested employees, and Dr. Murphy's been researching some on that. Also our employee assistance program that many of you in corporate or educational experiences have seen has been very beneficial. We also offer currently long-term disability and life insurance. So we want to continue to look at those things that attract personnel to our district. With PHIP costs increasing annually, as we've seen over the years, and as well as other challenges that are mandated, we want to continue to look at retention efforts. Also, we're looking at our supplement and salary schedules to be competitive and fair. So we're reviewing our budget for supplements to redefine and revise a schedule to attract and retain coaches and sponsors. And I believe that's primarily my section on that objective. Are there any questions?
Mr. President, Ms. Bill, we've, a couple of us have talked a little bit about possibly doing, I know we do exit interviews. We always would be concerned when an employee leaves. Now, if you have 2013, that was certainly an incentive, but to find out if an employee left for a reason they thought that the system could do better or whatever reason, and possibly even do a third-party exit interview just to get a completely objective fact finding. So what are your thoughts about that?
We have actually created a exit interview form. We implemented it some last year. We've had some different forms in the past. Some feel comfortable by doing a third party, going through HR or other areas or means. We sent out letters to all individuals that resigned or retired at the end of last school year during the summer, provided a Google link for them to complete it electronically so that it gathers all the data. We did not have the response that we wanted, so now when we submit board notifications for resignations or retirements, we include the exit interview form there. In certain instances, we also will contact the individual and ask if they would like to complete one, either verbally, over the phone, face-to-face. So we're trying to give different options to see if we can get additional feedback.
No problems if it's a third party. Our intent is what can we do better, and why are people just continuing service with us? And from that end, if the comfort is more a third party, we'd be all in. We really want the feedback. We can only get better based on feedback.
In the business I'm in, we don't lose very many employees, but when we do, we have done that because it's just sometimes hard for an employee, especially if they're going to stay in my case, this industry, in this case, institutional life, and maybe they're more comfortable with a completely third-party interview. So.
And would our employee assistance group do something like that, or that's outside the purview of their work?
We could inquire to find out. I'm not aware, but I do know when I initially started over 10 years ago, we looked at employee screening services. They do provide that.
Again, anonymous to us, not looking for,
Yeah.
who said that?
That was one of our vendors that we researched, and Earl, you may have been on the board at that time when we were discussing that as a third party.
The challenge here is, and the reason you have such a poor response, in my opinion, is if I'm leaving because, for whatever the reason is, if it's because I'm unhappy, I want to be careful. I don't rat out one of my peers or my principal or as a teacher, as an example. And yet, I don't want to say anything bad either, because if I'm going to go get another job, as Craig indicated, another system, I don't want somebody saying something bad about me, kind of thing. So it's so difficult, and it's the same way in the corporate world. You know, you got to be so careful. And so I don't think it's any fault of anybody's in the system. I mean, it's just the way it is. And so when you really want to get to the root cause of why people leave or what's really going on, yeah, third party is important, but it's more than just a punctuary thing. It's almost a psychological thing. Somebody's got to have the sophistication to peel back the onion in a way that allows somebody to be comfortable enough to share. You know, not that you got to get a psychologist, psychiatrist to do this necessarily, but you know, if you're losing 10, 12% of your people, and some percentage of that are people who just don't want to work here anymore. The amount of time, effort, and money spent in getting them to adjust and understand what we do and how we do it, going right out the door. And it's just like professional development. You know, it's down at the school level. I'll tell you the school district close by who actually has a scholarship program. If you want to do some heavy duty professional development, become a leader and whatever that is, and fine, we'll invest in you over a period of time or wherever it is. But in return, you're going to sign a contract that says you're going to be here for at least 3 times, 3 years. So we don't train you and you up and go somewhere else. Not that you would, but you might. And so there's a whole bunch of ways of getting at this, but personnel, I'll allude to it, is so important. And losing people for reasons that we can affect. In fact, it's something we ought to try to figure out what that is, if that is the case.
Great. Other questions?
Goal 3.
Good evening. Goal 3 is to achieve unitary status. Not difficult. We have lots of collaboration for this particular goal, so you'll see some other people joining me in just a moment. But our first objective is to implement the court-approved student assignment plan in order to eliminate the vestiges of prior de jure segregation to the extent practicable. The action steps, of course, support that implementation of the rezoning plan upon approval. So the first one is upon receiving final court approval that we would implement the student assignment plan. Our second action step is to implement a student transfer plan that will address the following: racial desegregation transfers, substantial hardship transfers, children of employees out of district transfers, and employee transfers. And then our final action step is to disseminate the details of Hoover City Schools student transfer plans to the stakeholders using the following communication methods: Code of Student Conduct, the Internet, board meetings, printed copies, and rapid notification system. Our anticipated outcomes for these action steps include to increase building capacity for student growth, address the continued growth in the western region of our city, and to decrease the likelihood of major changes in other elementary attendance zones. We also anticipate an increase in desegregation among schools to the extent practicable, and increased communication with our stakeholders.
Wouldn't Jason be there? Projected number 3? And that's his primary responsibility.
When you see the leaders, these are just people who are working in this area. That does not mean that that's everybody included. So we have some people who are identified to just make sure that these things are being implemented. But yes, Jason is very involved. Aren't you, Jason?
I just would really like to get a deadline on it.
Oh, yeah. I'll get that for the next board meeting.
How about right after Christmas? Okay, Mary? Board members, what you have is we're literally walking through the green factors. So the objectives are our green factors that would help us get there in case we didn't make all that connection known.
The next objective is to increase the ratio of diversity in faculty and staff assignment to an acceptable level to obtain our green factor for unitary status. And of course, our primary objective is to have our staff be more reflective of our student population. So this will require us to enhance our recruiting efforts. So we want to increase that minority representation by at least 1% annually. We have been able to reach that target for the past 3 years, but we want to continue that with at least 1% annual increase. Also maintain equitable representation of minorities in our non-certificated positions. And along those lines, we want to make sure that we're providing professional development, mentoring, and any kind of in-service training to both certificated and non-certificated personnel.
When we say faculty and staff, are we including administrators and central office personnel too?
Yes.
Okay, objective 3C is to ensure equity in transportation services for students. Our action steps to support this is to realign student attendance assignments, to make school attendance zone boundaries contiguous and community-centric. Our second one is to renew bus fleet to maximize state transportation funding, to ensure bus route efficiency, and to maintain the state approval for the 2-mile limit waiver that we've received. Our anticipated outcomes are community schools and the elimination of enclaves of students who are now zoned to schools outside of their communities, to ensure that our bus fleet renewal revenue is maximized, shorter travel time for our students and increased driver efficiency, and to transport students who may have become reliant upon our bus service but no longer would have that because of their rezoning schools.
I would say a lot of these things are not really part of the strategic plan because they're not visionary, because we're already doing it. We did do it. We renew the bus fleet. We continue to ensure bus route efficiency. I mean, it's a great checkoff box and maybe a porta factor and a green factor. I got all that. But when you're doing something already and you have been doing it, it's not a visionary thing that follows the strategic plan unless you say sustain what you're already doing. Check that off and move on.
Yeah, I agree, but I think that it's important, and correct me if I'm wrong, for us to have documentation and the things that we're doing so that as we are trying to get approval of these green factors, that we have all of this before us and that this is something that we're constantly working towards.
Well, at the end of the day, the whole notion of objective 3 is you're going to do whatever the federal courts tell you to do.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I mean, if you can delineate it out like that, but I'm just saying, this is an example. There's other pieces in there too of goals and objectives of things that we're already doing and have been doing, and we just do it as normal course of our business.
I think the goal is to get unitary status, and we're simply trying to give the strategic steps that take us to the goal. It isn't necessarily a goal to ensure bus route efficiency as much it is, these are all the parts and parcels of how do we reach a goal, which is unitary status, which is an exceptionally laudable goal in the next 5 years. It's something that we need to achieve. We need the, all due respect, federal government to allow us to run our school district, but it's incumbent upon us to walk through some steps to get us there. So I think that's the goal of unitary status. And yeah, we are already doing some of these things, but we have to continue to sustain those and do even more, because yes, at the end of the day, you know, I guess this action step could have been more about comply with the judge, comply with the judge, comply with the judge. We're simply trying to be thoughtful about what steps take us to that.
Objective 3B minimize barriers to participation in extracurricular activities to increase minority participation. Our action steps to support this objective: to develop a system to track extracurricular offerings, criteria for participation and student selection, and two, to provide professional development for building level administrators regarding non-discrimination practices, to include ensuring that non-discrimination notices are available for all students choosing to try out, participate in extracurricular activities, and the principals must ensure that this professional development is provided to the sponsors of extracurricular activities. Our anticipated outcomes are to decrease the barriers to participation and for the sponsors of extracurricular activities to ensure non-discriminatory practices. Objective 3E is to ensure a clean, safe learning environment for all students. Our action steps to conduct the facility assessments that have been mentioned before, complete and maintain a 5-year capital outlay plan, redesign the property formerly known as River Chase Middle School to address student capacity issues and to offer opportunities for skilled trades, and to prepare buildings involved in grade level reconfiguration due to the implementation of the rezoning plan. Our anticipated outcomes are to prioritize and plan for facility needs, to plan for major projects, to establish a skilled trade center and decrease capacity issues at the secondary level, especially for Hoover High School, and to modify Brocks Gap, South Shades Crest, Simmons Middle School, Green Valley, and Rocky Ridge in anticipation of those needs for those schools.
We will monitor and improve student discipline. The action steps will analyze discipline data on a yearly basis and identify any disparities in infractions and dispositions. We'll collaborate and implement a program or professional development that addresses school-wide discipline, positive behavioral support, and school culture. We'll revise the RTI for behavior plan, and we'll evaluate in-school suspension and crossroads and implement appropriate resources to address student misbehaviors.
May I say a couple things? Response to intervention, you probably know that, but let me respond to that. And while we say we'll analyze discipline data on a yearly basis, what we would like for you to know is that we're ongoing looking at that. So we use as a checkpoint yearly, but that's something that's evaluated or looked at or assessed on an ongoing basis through the academic year.
We'll monitor and improve student attendance. We'll evaluate and track chronic absenteeism for the district and share the data with the school administrators. We'll revise and implement the attendance policy, and we'll complete an attendance campaign to inform the community and all of our stakeholders about the changes to the attendance policy.
And so finally, I would like to say that as Dr. Murphy shared with you, these are the ring factors that are basically in this particular section of the goal. And we are not at liberty to say when these things will occur, but I will share with you, I guess, a list in order as to how we might achieve those. We don't have a time and those kinds of things, but there is guidance as far as what is typically granted first. We already have a student assignment plan that has been preliminarily approved, so we're waiting on that final approval, and upon receiving that, we will implement it. And so we are hopeful that we will receive that so we can implement that within the 2018-2019 school year. Transportation, we do have that waiver that we've requested, and the State Department has granted that for us, but we are waiting, of course, to implement that associated with the student assignment plan. So upon that approval, we will implement that as well during the 2018-19 school year if we receive that. Our facilities are wonderful. Our operations staff continue to modify and maintain our facilities to ensure clean and safe learning environments for all of our students. Currently, we're in the process of changing out the fluorescent lights at Green Valley Elementary School to LED, and it has made a tremendous impact on the student learning environment. And so we'll be finishing that this year, but that's just one example of some of the things that operations notices and does to make sure that our schools are clean and safe and great learning environments for our students. Extracurricular activities, we're developing and implementing a tracking system for that. This is an ongoing process, and we have actually begun that, but we'll continue to do that to make sure that students aren't being excluded for any reason, especially as we go through and move through the unitary status process. The staff assignment plan, we're trying to maintain equitable representation of our minority staff throughout our classified positions. And so we're providing ongoing professional development and mentoring for these employees. Probably the most difficult one to receive is the faculty assignment plan, and that's not just for Hoover City, but that's for most districts. And so we are working towards increasing our minority representation in the certificated positions. And our target is 1% annually. So for the life of this strategic plan, we would have increased by 5%.
Dr. Smith?
Yes.
If I can interrupt, and that you can correct me if I'm wrong. This plan of these green factors, it doesn't mean you've got to meet all these factors and everything's got to be perfect. Correct me, Whit, but if the judge sees that we have a plan that the data is there for her honor to look at, and we have goals, workable goals, and we're making progress, then I think a consent decree could be issued. Is this correct?
What typically happens is that, I mean, at this stage in the game, we've received an RFI from the Department of Justice, which is a request for information. It's a comprehensive look at the school district. We have provided that information to the Department of Justice. All of this is in preparation for discussions about a comprehensive consent decree that frankly you guys have done a great job, because the factors that go in the consent decree track what you're preparing in the strategic plan. So in a way, we're building that capacity for what probably will go in a consent decree. Unfortunately, we don't get to decide unilaterally everything that goes in the consent decree. That's done by negotiation, and then the court obviously has the final say on what goes in it. But yes, good faith is really the major component in a case like this, and so building this capacity, the strategic plan, and the commitment of this board to obtaining, really to hitting these goals is what I would say, as opposed to achievement of unitary status in and of itself. These goals will all build to get you there, and the good faith component, we're getting out ahead of it. And what that does is that sends a message, and it's not just sending a message, it shows the board's commitment to doing the right things that are expressed within these goals and within the action steps and anticipated outcomes. So you're correct, it's not a rigid framework, and each case sort of has a life of its own. Every school district is a little bit different. And so, yeah, you won't just check off boxes, but the general framework will be fairly consistent with what's been presented in the plan. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. You confirmed I wouldn't have done it. So, yeah.
What's that? I'm sorry, I said
too much. Right. So yeah, no. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Smith, I have one question. On the waiver for the 2-mile limit on transportation,
yes.
Is that we only have to do it one time? And
yes, that's how the state actually wrote it, so we don't have to reapply.
So that waiver is in place and can be implemented upon the judge's approval of this plan, and the letter from the state superintendent specifically states that we do not have to ask for that waiver annually, that the only caveats to that are if we close a school, open a school, or something changes that would change students who may or may not need that transportation, then we would have to converse with the state about that.
Thank you.
And then lastly, we have Jason Gaston, who's going to talk to us about our relationship with our partners, stakeholders, community.
That's right.
Goal 4, as you see on the screen there, actively engage the ACS community in order to strengthen stakeholder partnerships to support the evolving needs of students. So undergirding that goal are several objectives. First one you see on the screen there, create a superintendent's advisory council composed of key communicator groups to advise and to help identify, frame, and deliver appropriate messages to our community. And we have already had a superintendent's advisory council. We used it for the purposes of kind of framing this plan that we have now, and we're looking to further structure that. And part of the benchmarks you have in your binders there, you'll see that we want to add capacity to those key communicator groups. Currently, what I would define as our core communicator groups would be the Finley Committee for Character Education, Hoover City Schools Foundation, HPTC, the Hoover Parent Teacher Council, and our realtors. So we just last week had our second Realtors Roundtable at Spain Park High School that was open to realtors across Metro Birmingham. As we know, realtors sell across city and school boundary lines. So we had a good core turnout there, and they've expressed interest actually in us coming back in the coming weeks to their office up in Homewood. Set quarterly meetings with members of the Superintendent's Advisory Council. That's under Objective 4A. We want to, again, as I said off the top, further structure this and make sure that we have some regularity to these meetings. And also, you'll see, let me back up a step, one thing that I heard consistently leading this subcommittee was more minority participation, and that kind of intertwines with some of our other discussions here, but more minority participation in groups such as HBTC and maybe more outreach to students of different ethnicities. So we've talked about partnering with the Hispanic Interest Coalition and other advocacy groups around town to make sure that we are engaging students of all backgrounds. We'll scroll down here. Objective 4B, utilize diverse communication platforms and improve district/school social media presence. Right now, we're in the conversion phase for our websites and our rapid notification system and our smartphone app. So currently, we have School Messenger for rapid notification, School Insights for our web platforms, and we did have a free app through School Messenger that we have pulled from the stores as of 2 weeks ago. So if you were to search in iTunes or Google Play, you would not find the Hoover City Schools app. It was not the function that we needed. And I conducted a survey last year for all parents and discovered that 54%, and this was a year ago already, 54% of parents seek out our information on mobile devices only. So, and we know nationwide that statistic continues to grow. So we want to make sure our delivery of communication is optimal for mobile devices. And that means that our websites have what's called responsive design. So what you see up here, what you see down here, is going to morph to here to serve those families who rely strictly on this device. And part of that, under that objective, of course, includes the app. And when I look at the analytics of our current website for the district, which gets, I would say, around 130,000 hits per month, we get about 2 million views per year just on the Hoover City Schools website. Below that, Spain Park High School is our most visited school website. Elementary menus are the most visited section of the website, as you can imagine. And below that are jobs and employment, people seeking HR opportunities with Hoover City Schools. So we want to make sure in the redevelopment of our district website, which it is set to go live around Christmas, that it has the functionality that we've already mentioned, but higher placement of the most clicked items. So that's certainly an objective to better reach our families. Rapid notification, I was at Berry Middle School just this morning training some of their administrators. I've probably made visits to all but one, actually I have made visits to all but one of our schools, training administrators who use rapid notification. That is the term we use for the fast calls that parents get when there's a tornado or snow or just a weekly newsletter. So routine to emergency when we email, call, or text parents. So we're going with a company called Blackboard. It's a global company. They've got offices everywhere from North Carolina to Beijing, Sydney. They serve K-12 and collegiate level. So we feel confident in their abilities to help us take our communication to the next level. Enhanced social media presence. We have collectively, I would say, hundreds of thousands of followers across all of our Facebook pages that the schools maintain and that the athletic teams maintain. And as you heard tonight, Environmental Science Club at Hoover High School, they've got an Instagram account. So it gets really granular in terms of who has an account. And when you aggregate those, that's a whole other audience we're reaching through social media. So we can't assume that everybody comes straight to our district website. We can't assume that everybody comes straight to the school website. I would prefer, as the communications person, that's where they would start. But we know a lot of our families and stakeholder groups go directly to social media pages. So one of the goals would be to work with school administrator teams to make sure those pages are updated and that they are properly advertised and that they include a cross posting of all events in the schools. If you take a quick audit, you can see some that are skewing heavily athletic, some may be skewing heavily academic. We want to make sure that we include academics, athletics, fine arts, and we have minority representation. So we want to make sure that we're including all opportunities across the district that we know exist, but it takes the human element to get out there and promote those efforts to our stakeholders. Americans with Disabilities Act compliance standards. This is really huge right now in school PR. In fact, I'm on the board for the National School PR Association. I'm honored to be on that board. I'm wrapping up year 3 of a 3-year appointment and actually learned about this by service on that board. But there's an advocate up north who has filed complaints against school systems through the Office of Civil Rights for barriers to people with disabilities. So for example, if someone has visual impairments, then they're obviously a website is going to need to have a different functionality for them with regard to assistive technologies like screen readers. So Blackboard, our new platform, is really on top of their game with assistive technologies and web compliance. In fact, Dr. Murphy has given us time tomorrow here at Central Office to have a webinar with one of their compliance officers in Salt Lake City, and he's going to walk us through the steps of compliance. Of course, we have Claire Jones-Moore, and she's an expert in some of these assistive technologies and how students right in our very schools use them. So that's a good resource for us to have. And lastly, I'll wrap this up very quickly. Appreciate your time. This is always a challenge right here, increasing positive publicity for the school district and all its schools. As we all know, good news travels fast, bad news travels faster. So we have to work as a school system, and all schools, public or private, have to be their own news centers. We have to be journalists in residence. And we have to make sure that we are combing through and mining our schools for those good stories and getting that positive media placement. So I've got a tracking system not only for the media requests that currently come in, but I'm starting to track the frequency of updates for all 17 of our websites. And keep in mind, we do not have a district webmaster. We don't have webmasters for the schools. We have teachers who may act in the capacity of a webmaster, or librarians or counselors. So they have core duties, and then they get to the website when they can, but they do get supplemental pay for that, so there is an accountability expected. We're going to build in some capacity for tracking that measurement there and increasing audits to make sure the content is relevant, it's up to date, and the frequency increases. And you will see also deeper under Objective 4C, principal training. We've done this in the past. Media training for our principals and our top-level staff. I conducted one-on-one media training with an employee the other day who I thought was going to have some media coverage on an issue. But in the past, we've brought principals together, and we've invited local media personalities like Sherry Jackson from Channel 42, some of our print partners. We've had a media panel. We've done mock interviews with principals because, keep in mind, even though I serve as a spokesperson for the district alongside Dr. Murphy, of course, and the board obviously can speak on behalf of the school system, sometimes the camera is going to come directly to the principal or the assistant principal, or a teacher may get caught in the parking lot. We do have some media protocols, but we want to beef up on those and make sure We take those to the next level with training. Any questions?
Thank you.
Board members, you have before you work that has been a part of a 2-year process, lots of feedback from last year, putting together that information in a format for you. We certainly respect any thoughts and opinions that you'll bring to the table to us as it relates to the plan. And what we're looking for is just the very best plan that we can get that supports students' teaching and learning, that focuses on our faculty and our staff, that allows us to make sure that we're providing them all the support and benefits that we can, to make sure that we're being thoughtful and frugal with our taxpayers' money, to make sure that we're being good communicators to our public, and obviously our interest and desire to achieve unitary status and what those appropriate steps that take us there. So that's kind of the big view of where we are, and we're certainly open to any of your comments now, and I certainly realize that you'll give more study and thought to this over this next few weeks, and we'll embrace all thoughts and concerns and questions and suggestions. So thank you for giving us this time.
Well, thank you to your probably the staff and stakeholders who got involved in this. Evolving a strategic plan is no easy process when you're trying to build consensus about what it's going to say. When you try to articulate what you really want it to mean, so everybody has a common understanding and belief in it. It's a beast.
It is.
And it's a great start.
Well, I would be remiss not to look back out at my staff, and it's they've just done terrific work, Trojan efforts on their part, and it's where we are at this point, and we now embrace your thoughts. We'll be pushing this out either this evening or in the morning to our entire school district, and they likewise will have an opportunity to provide us any feedback, our teachers, our principals. We had teachers and principals who served on the subcommittees. We've not been dismissive of anything they wanted to say to us, and we'll continue to embrace anything they want to share as it relates to the strategic plan.
Thank you. Any other information reports?
I believe not, other than I'm sorry, we do. Real quickly, Ron, could you just give us a update on the River Chase Career Connection Center and then a request to go into executive session?
We own the property now. That's update number one, which is good to have the keys to the car. For those in the audience who may not be familiar, we are looking at using this facility as a grade 10-12 shared campus between Hoover High School and Spain Park, primarily to focus on skilled trade career programs. We would bring students there for morning and afternoon shifts. They'd have half their day on this campus and half their day on their home campus. So they would still be able to be connected to other classes and extracurricular activities at their base school. We're looking at running the school as a simulated workspace where students are going to work while they're there, and they're learning all of those related soft skills as well as the technical training that goes along with their areas. We're still looking, the list has grown and shrunk and changed as we've talked to business and industry in the area, but we're still looking at building construction, and with that, carpentry, electrical, welding, heavy equipment operation, several different areas there. The culinary arts is a natural fit because of the commercial kitchen that's sitting there in that school ready to go. Computer science, focusing on network administration and software development. Fire college, working with our Hoover Fire Department to grow local firefighters for the city. And then later looking at some other areas like industrial automation, cosmetology, landscaping, and there's others that will come along to be considered. We've had very positive feedback from our community, lots of businesses and industry partners who want to be a part of this, want to help. Affirmation that people recognize the changes in our job market and our support the school system's efforts to respond to those changes. Some concerns expressed about the potential impact on existing academies, and Dr. Murphy and I both have reassured those teachers that we are first and foremost focused on these programs that we don't have, not necessarily just picking up things and moving them, but thinking about the programs that we don't have and expanding those opportunities for students. We do need to move students to this campus because we are hoping this also helps relieve some of our crowding issues at high school. But our first focus will be on things, on getting programs started there that we don't have. As Dr. Murphy mentioned, we've gone through several iterations of names. I like this latest iteration, but appreciate feedback on that. I see the mission of this campus is to turn passion and purpose into professions. And I think this can be the place to do that. The next steps of what we're doing, we're in the process of getting unneeded furniture out of the building. Pelham left a lot of furniture in place in anticipation of the private school using it. And we're going to use some of that, but most of the furniture is not going to be usable in the way that we're using the building. We have reached out to our school principals. We had a yard sale actually last week for principals. No, we didn't sell anything, but they came through and tagged things, and we'll be moving a lot of items that they can use on their campuses out of the building. We've also contacted the state of Florida and the state of Louisiana to ask about schools there that have been damaged that need things like library furniture and lunchroom tables, student desks. The state of Florida has responded, and they definitely want to come and take some things that they can use there. So we're in the process of arranging that. And the next steps will be hiring the director, as you've approved the job description tonight, looking to an architect, getting advisory council set up for these programs for all these wonderful partners that have offered to help us put this thing together, getting the building ready because we do intend to start school next August. With the first kids and to have kids there working. We're going to need to show the kids what these careers are. So we're looking at an exposition that we can hold similar to the one that many of you saw on our year retreat in October in Tuscaloosa, and trying to do something like that locally so that when our kids are making decisions about these programs, they've talked to people, they've seen the jobs, they know what the expectations are and what the salaries for those jobs are going to be. After that, student course selection, hiring staff, and opening school in August. So
I want to thank you and Dr. Murphy for those community meetings at Spain Park at Hoover. That was so important, and you guys did a great job at opening up and being very honest, forthright, and answering all the individual interests of what was going on there. Very well done.
It was good. We met people there that we would not have met otherwise, who, again, wanted to be involved in the program. So thank you.
Thank you for that update.
The next board meeting will be Tuesday, December 12th, 2017, 5:30 here. We're now scheduled to go into executive session.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hoover. At this time, I'd request that the board consider voting to go into executive session so that we could continue or consider a matter that's properly viewed as confidential under the Alabama Open Meetings Act. Our attorney is here and can attest to the need for that. The board must first vote as to whether we go into or adjourn to go into the executive session. And so, Mr. President, I would encourage that we entertain such a motion at this time for executive session. Would you address that?
It's my understanding that the motion will need to specify the reason for the executive session, and that reason is to discuss litigation or matters likely to lead to pending litigation. And I certify that that's an appropriate reason for it. Executive session under Alabama's open meetings law.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn to executive session? So moved. Do I have a second? Second. I move that the board adjourn to executive session to discuss litigation or pending litigation or things that might lead to litigation. After the motion is seconded, I need to get Linda to call a vote so we can make sure everybody is recorded.
Earl Cooper,
Yes.
Craig Kelly,
Yes.
Deanna Bowman. Yes. Amy Tosney.
Yes.
Kermit Kendrick.
Yes.
Time is 8:44. Really, it's 7:44. They haven't changed the clock yet.
That's right. Sorry about that.
But that's the conclusion of the executive session, which I think should take what, 30 to 45?
Just sure.
Let's go with it.
We will adjourn at that point.
But you will not undertake any further action.
Yeah, there'll be no further action undertaken. Just adjourn.
Hi.